Hi everyone! I wanted to talk about the nature of a play and costumes and how do we do analysis, character development, how do we read a play, and all the things that go into being a costume designer, because essentially the essence of what we do is we are telling story through fabric. I often like to joke that I make costumes for imaginary people in a temporary universe, because that's all that plays are. It's like we are just creating this little bubble of time and space in our illusionary reality, but it's also happening in real time, because I can tell you that Tech Week is definitely real. No matter how fake the play may be, no matter where the play is set, you definitely feel the pressure of the reality of the time dimension that we're currently in versus the one that we're creating. So anyways, I wanted to read a little bit from The Magic Garment. And this is in chapter 2. It's under What is a Play? So, a play is a playwright's version of some truth, an illusion often more real or penetrating than reality. A play is a live representation of selected actions. Plays happen in the present no matter what time they represent. The stage is a magic time machine on which we view events from other areas and from the minds and imaginations of other men and women. The script of a play is but a blueprint for these events, not a finished product. It contains dialogue, character information, and directions for action. The script is the playwright's attempt to reveal a person's vision to the audience. And I really like that because I thought that it captured the essence of what is a play and what we're doing here. As a costume designer, one of the first things I ask is, where's the script? What is the play about? Where are we setting it? Is it a devised piece? I mean, that we're writing it as we go? Is it sort of a play, but it's a little bit more of a dance piece? So the script will look like this is movement 1, 2, and 3, and we get to figure out where it's going according to the dancers' bodies or the performers' bodies. Is it a remake? If it's Shakespearean, then you have so many questions, because every single Shakespearean play you'll ever work on will be different from the last one, because even if they say it's we're going to do it in the period, in the style, it will be so different, because now you have different people, you have different actors, you have different directors, every line will be said slightly different. So it's always about taking copious notes and trying to figure out exactly where this is going, and then collaborating with other people. One thing that makes being a costume designer a little bit more challenging than being just a set designer or a lighting designer is that we have this total human element. And that's something that I really like about costume design, because it's I imagine these characters, I think about them, I do research on them, and then we get into creating, because I am not just a designer, I also build costumes. So then I'm getting into the actual structure of the garment. And then the magic happens when a performer puts it on and your creation comes to life. It's what I imagine being an animator is like, in that they actually get to see their drawings move and have thoughts, and sometimes too many opinions. Sometimes a few too many opinions, but it's okay. That's all part of it, is navigating it. Sometimes you're going to wear pink because we're going to wear pink because we have to have somebody in pink because there's a whole chorus. I don't really care if you don't like pink or you don't think it's that flattering. Trust me, when everything is together, it will all look beautiful, because I've designed it and I can see the big picture. And sometimes performers get so caught in their little mind bubble that they can only see where they are in time and space on the play, and not how they are affecting everything. Anyways. So you're given a script, right? Somebody emails it to you, or you print it out and you start taking notes. And so depending on the timing, if I have a lot of time, I will sit down with the script and have a notepad and actually write things out, which I really like that, because I'm a journaler. So reading something and then just free writing what I think about this character, I find very fulfilling, and it makes me feel like I'm very one with the play, or I'm kind of getting inside the mind of the playwright. If I don't have a ton of time, because a lot of times in this business, like in theater or television or film or anything, a lot of times they're looking for someone last minute, and you'll have like a week, if that, to do your pre-planning. So meetings with directors, meetings with designers, meetings with producers, and meetings with anybody else that's going to be on your team. So if I need to hire a makeup artist or special effects people, or I need to hire another builder because I can't build this thing on my own. So you have a week to get like all these people in a row, but you also only have a little bit of time to essentially like read the play one really good time all the way through, taking notes, and then reading the play again to get all the little nitty gritty things, especially after you've had meetings when someone says, oh, in Act 3, scene blah, 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 we think that there's going to be a little magical realism where they fall into time and space, and we want them to change cops. So then you have to go back and like really break down all of those moments. And sometimes if it's a play, then you're talking to your stage manager to figure out like, okay, so what do you think the timing is going to look like? And if it's a play, then you have a little bit more time to figure that out. Sometimes when I've worked on set, there's like the day before we're figuring out all this big technical stuff, and then we break, and then the morning happens, and here we go, and there we are, we're like off trying to make all this magic happen very quickly. So that's when you have to like communicate a lot. It's a lot of emails. It's a lot of emails. I think half of designing is emails, and then the other half is like the fun artsy stuff, but it's like so many emails. So let's talk script analysis. I think it's really important when I'm taking notes that I copy down the notes from the actual physical script. So if it says, Joanne walks in through the door, takes off her shoes and coat, pets cat, I want to write that down because it told me, where she's going in it. This is, say, her coming home routine. She comes home, she takes off this, she greets her cat. But then there are other moments in the play that are much subtler. It can be between just dialogue of characters, where now Joanne is talking about like how she feels about work and how she feels about like what she has to wear to work, or she really hates that the women in her office wear super short skirts and she would never do that. Like that is something really important because that is telling us about the character. So if I'm looking up images for Joanne or even shopping for her, I know that I need to look for things that are more conservative, or she would wear a long dress with maybe a blazer over it. She would never wear something that's short, or possibly would never wear like suit pants that are a little too form-fitting. Like she's not trying to be sexy, and that we might find that maybe later on she actually wants to break out of her little shell that she's put herself in. And then there might be a moment in the play where we actually get to see that happen, or in whatever script we're working on. But in that moment, we need to focus in. So if I'm reading this and I'm taking my notes, whether it's analog notes or I'm typing it into my costume plot, then I would copy down the actual hard note that's in the script, and then I usually sometimes in italics or parentheses just for myself, I'll put like she thinks that the women in her office are overly sexualizing themselves, or they're wearing things that are inappropriate for the workplace. Now, she might not have said that directly, but in the dialogue we picked up on the subtleness of her character. And that's all part of the storytelling of costuming, is that it's not just about like, oh, well, Joanne is a middle-aged Middle Eastern woman who's from immigrant parents and worked her way up, and she went to community college and then went to an Ivy League school for her master's and doctorate and blah, 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 blah. Like we can get into that part of her, but then we have to get into like the other layers of her. It's like, oh, well, she comes from, say, a conservative background. She felt like she really had to deny her own self, her own individuality, to play the game of being an American, to move up in, the hierarchy of corporate America. But that's not necessarily really who she is. Let's say that maybe we find out that she really loves animals and has always dreamed of having a cat rescue. I'm making this up, but Joanne always wanted to have a cat rescue. And so somewhere in her costume, maybe it could even be as subtle as she puts on her pajamas and the print is like cats. Or we buy her a wallet, because sometimes we have to buy wallets for people, and she pulls out her wallet and it's the picture of a cat. And like, those are the subtle ways in which we are telling the character's story without being like, she's a cat lady! She hates her job and wants to quit and form a cat-only restaurant and a cat rescue, or something like that, you know? We have to be really subtle about it. Or it could be as simple as like, she's wearing very conservative earrings, but they're of like a little baby cat or something like that. Or it could be something else, you know? Let's talk about costume plots. The costume plot is going to be your friend. Oh my God, when I am really stressed, when people ask me questions, I'm just like, I'm not going to say anything until I have my costume plot in front of me. It's almost like I can't say anything without my attorney, because I try to put so much into it that essentially one costume designer said that your costume plot should be so detailed that if you died, somebody else could like pick it up and run with your show. I don't know if that's really true, but I think it's kind of a good way to be. Like, it should be as planned out as possible and have as many details about what the people are wearing and when they're changing and how they change. And in theater, sometimes I'll actually have to put like, they exit stage right, they change over here, this person is their person that's changing them, and then they enter over here. And then in opera, you have to put like the music bar, like we're at bar number 103 in this aria, and then they're going to come in at 126, and then you can actually say like how many bars of music they have to get from one place to the next and change, because opera is more about music and less about dialogue. I mean, there's lots of dialogue within the singing and you get lots of story, but it's not nearly like a kitchen sink drama where it's like dialogue. So in costume plot, I typically do it in Excel. Some people will do it in Microsoft Word, but I think the Excel spreadsheet form is much better. And I throw in a lot of colors because I like looking at pretty things. So mine are always rainbows with like different colored font, which I think for my creative mind helps me keep track of the tracking. And then I'm not just looking at this like black and white spreadsheet forever. A new thing that I've added to my costume plot as we've moved into the modern age is I'll actually not only list the actor's name, the character, important descriptions. Sometimes it's like before the play even starts, there could be like a lot of description about each character. Some playwrights are very, very heavy-handed with what they want their characters to look like or who should be cast in it. And so I'll just make a note of that. Even if we decide as a group that's not going to be what we do, but I think it's important to have that written down. I also have added a category for the performer's pronouns, because I think it's really important to like honor the people who are performing. So even if the actor goes by he, but they're playing a female character, I think it's important to note that like their pronoun is he. So that way when I'm in fittings and we're having communication, because as a costume designer, we tend to actually contact the performers a lot, or we'll go through stage manager, but then there's times where they just have my number and they'll ask if they can have a fitting 5 minutes before their call time, or this or that, or can they come up and try some more shoes, or whatever is happening. I talk with the performers all the time. So I want to make sure that I'm honoring who they are, because they are real people playing fake people in a temporary universe in a bubble world. So let's talk about non-scripted performance pieces. Before I moved to Florida, I did a lot of dance shows, a lot of devised pieces, a lot of new works. I used to work for a dance company as the house manager, and then when you're there, you meet lots of dancers, you get hired, you become friends. And so working in dance is actually one of my all-time favorite forms of performance. That, and also like postmodern movement pieces, or even just performance art, which is a whole genre to itself. I've worked on bridges, I've worked in abandoned buildings, I've worked like all over. And one of my favorite things about that is that it's almost like everything is costume. So if somebody's wearing like a white slip on this bridge, the bridge is part of their costume. The slip is part of their costume. The wind is their costume. Like the rain that's falling, because it's always going to rain. If you are doing anything outside, it's going to rain no matter the season. And in Chicago, it's probably going to snow and hail and sleet. And so you just kind of like, it's all part of it. So generally when you're working with something that's non-scripted, there's a lot of communication and a lot of just being present at the rehearsal. I know that a significant amount of my time is not going to be so much like reading and like making notes and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be getting myself to rehearsal and watching a significant amount of the rehearsal and talking to the performers like, okay, so I noticed you did this in this movement and this moment. How do you think this could play out? Like, this is what I'm thinking for your costume. First question is, can you move in it? Point blank, because that's all dancers are concerned with is, can they move in it? Once we figured out, okay, well, it's gonna look like a pair of men's business slacks, but it's actually made out of Lycra. They're like, oh, okay. You know, it's like, or I can put a godet in the crotch or under the arm so that you can lift your arm and move. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. So once you establish that, then you can move on to, well, how are we telling the story through your body, and how can the costume assist you and add more layers to telling of this story? As a designer for a dance piece, you really are, I don't want to say like a choreographer, but you have this role that's completely different than when you're working on something that's very scripted. It's like you are in the performance space. So now your body is affecting their body. You are taking notes. You sometimes have a little bit of say in what they're doing. At times, like I worked for this one performance artist and I was making these big like hoop skirts, and then the choreographer had them like lashing and beating them and like moving, and they were like very angry. And it was this piece about war and women and how wars keep being created to save women, but then the women are the ones that end up being damaged, that was the whole theme of this piece, right? So there's this moment where the women are almost like waves, and they're angry that their beauty has been used to destroy the earth, and they're beating and they're beating and they're beating. And so I was watching it and I was kind of like, this is really beautiful, but you're destroying the costumes and they're never gonna make it through your run. Is there anything else we can do except other than like they were beating the costumes against concrete? I was like, is there a way that they could like roll and tumble and do anything else but that? And I didn't fully win that battle, but the choreographer / director, sometimes there's a choreographer and a director, sometimes there's just a choreographer. The choreographer director was like, well, we'll just live with the decay of the clothes. And I was kind of like, okay, that's really not the answer I wanted. I really wanted you to make different choices that were a little bit more fluid, but I had to live with it, and that's part of the costumes. And then just come up with like plan B is see if we can buy more of those and build more. Plan C, how can we repair them? Plan D, just go with plan A, which is just let them decay. And yeah, by the end of that whole performance cycle, the wires were coming out, and the fabric, which they were made out of Vietnam era parachutes, was shredded. We were so shredded, and I was just trying to patch them up, and they were pretty shredded. And luckily the pictures are from before they got destroyed and not after they were destroyed. But I say that to say that that's all part of the journey, and you have to watch the show. It's almost like being a lighting designer, in that they have to show up to many rehearsals to figure out like where the lights need to be if people are moving. It's like, where are these costumes going according to how they're moving? And let me just say this, dance pieces change all the time. So you can say, yes, we approve this week, and then you'll get an email 2 days later. They're like, actually, we discovered a few things in rehearsal. And you're like, okay, what did we discover today? Yay! And you got to be just as flexible as they are, because they're dancers, and then they're going to get into tech and they're going to learn more things and more things and more things. And so I would suggest, like, have a lot of extra stuff in your arsenal of tools, whether that be extra leotards, extra hats, extra shoes, extra this, extra fabric in case they add somebody. You know, they like to add people last minute, even when you're like, we can only afford 10, and then they add 2 more, and you're like, well, maybe if I just cut this and to keep it all rolling, because costumes, we tend to be they don't ever want to hear us say no. They hate it when a costume designer says no. I think that actually there's like stereotypes that costume designers are like mean or crabby, or they just want to say no all the time. And it's not that we're just evil trolls trying to like hold all the costumes and like keep everything to ourselves and like hold all the jewels and like scold people for eating in their costume. It's not about that. It's just that we actually have to focus on the budget, and our budgets are typically just nothing. So many times they're like, oh, we're giving you $2,500 for this production. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, that's so much money. And I'm like, how many people are in it? And they're like, oh, it's only 23 people. And I'm like, okay, so we're down to like $100 per costume. And how many times are they changing? They're like, oh, well, the leads only changed 3 times, but the other 22 people in the chorus, they have to change like 8 times. So I'm like, all right, so let me like break that budget down for you. So we have essentially $100 per lead. Say we have 4 leads, right? They have 3 costumes, 3 complete costumes, like wig, shoes, jewelry, pants, underwear, because we have to buy people underwear. We have all this stuff, right? So now we're talking each costume change has to be like $20. Like, that's how much money I can spend per costume that these actors are wearing. And then we're getting into the chorus. So we said that was 25 people. It's $2,500. We have 21 chorus every people in the background, and they have 8 changes because they are essentially making up the world around us. So we're at a cafe, they're cafe people. We're at a factory, they're factory people. We're in a forest, they're trees. They're little gnomes in the forest. They're the sun and the moon and the stars. They're the ground. They're the water as the hero goes on. Like, these people are changing over and over and over again. So they have 8 costumes. Each costume must cost like $5 at that point. And that's usually when I go back and I'm like, you don't have enough money to do this show. And they're like, what do you mean? I gave you $2,500. Why are you like saying that I don't have enough money? And I'm like, you don't have enough money because each person only gets like $5 per costume because you have them in too many things. You've cast too many people. Now, if you were to redo your casting and you had your 4 leads, same budget, so we have $2,500, same budget, 4 people are our leads. Our leads are going on an adventure, right? And we had 10 extras, 10 ensemble members, 10 people that are forest and water and the sky and the moon. Now we're talking about, okay, well, between buying from thrift stores, if you have access to a storage, if it's a company that has some kind of storage, it's like, okay, well, perhaps I could supplement some of it from storage, but you do not be fooled when they tell you that they have storage and you can just pull a show from a storage. I've been doing this my entire life and I have yet to pull a show 100% from a storage. I swear on all the artist books, it's never happened. At some point we have to buy something, or somebody has to go and borrow something from somewhere else, or you have to go buy something from somewhere else, or the actor has to bring in something that you don't love, but they can't be naked on stage. I have never, ever, ever pulled an entire show from storage because storage clothes and the people cast will not always be in sync with each other, especially if it's a very old storage and the humans were a lot smaller back then. Like some theaters that they've been running for like 40, 50 years. 50 years ago, people were completely different sizes than they are right now. So let's say we've cut our budget down. We have 4 people. We have 10 ensemble. We still have $2,500 for our budget. Now we're talking about each costume could be like $10, $8. We have a little bit more leeway. So that means that, okay, so for the water nymph creatures, I actually can afford to buy, I can find online like $10 jumpsuits, leotards. And so we're going to take them and then we'll do a lot of, this is where you need a really good costume crew, because we have to spread our budget, and spreading the budget is like, oh my God, this dance company already has things that are so beautiful and pretty and we would love to buy them, but we can't afford them. So what we have to do is buy plain leotards and jumpsuits, and then we got to put a lot of art into it. So that is essentially actually costing the company more money than they realize, because now you have to pay crew people to sit there and like hand paint all the stuff, or, you know, I'm spending time dyeing and painting and doing all this extra work when I could be focused on making the leads look better, or sourcing better wigs, or being at your rehearsals, or answering emails on time. Because sometimes I get so caught up in the art making that the other side of it, the paperwork side, can be a little like, you know, they're like, where is the updated costume plan? And I'm like, I will get there as soon as my hands are no longer blue from dyeing all of your nymph stuff blue and my gloves broke and then there's dye all over everything. So there's that. I don't know if there's ever enough money for costumes unless it's one person and you have $2,500 and that person only changes like twice. Then maybe you could buy them like some really, really awesome stuff and they could just look like dripping in money. But if it is one person and they change 15 times, now that's like 15 divided by 2,500, and we're basically back to the first scenario where we had way too many people with a very small budget. So that's about budgeting. It is tricky, and sometimes you'll have a great producer and they're like, you know what? Set and lighting and this other thing didn't cost as much, and they will throw you an extra $1,000 because they realize that especially if they see that you're really, really trying and you're putting in all your effort to make these costumes look really good, they'll give you some extra money. And sometimes they're like, that's it. If you go over budget, it's on you. And I've put a lot of money in theaters. I've put a lot of money in shows, or I'll buy something and then I just keep it. I have a lot of random like hats and shoes and gloves and purses that I didn't really want to buy, but I needed it for my show because I was so dedicated to it. For the love of art. I think I'm going to end it right here. Thank you for watching, and there'll be more videos coming out soon about the nature of costume design and reading plays and script analysis and my experience. I've been doing this for, I don't know, I think professionally for 12 years, but then I did theater my entire life, so I don't even know how to calculate anymore. This is what I've essentially always done. I was born an artist. So thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye.